There were, and probably still are, many serial killers that keep parts of their victims as trophies. It's a terrifying thought to think about, for sure. But what's scarier is how common it is for a serial killer to actually mutilate their victims and take a part of their body as a trophy. An infamous example that comes to mind is that of Ed Gein, whom we've actually covered on a previous video. Shameless plug aside, Ed Gein took pleasure in mutilating the corpses of his victims, often taking parts of their bodies and saving them as trophies. Ted Bundy was known to take the heads of some of his victims, keeping them locked away in his fridge. And Jeffrey Dahmer would keep the genitals of some of his victims. One thing these three have in common is the cruel brutality they portrayed when collecting their trophies. Gein, Bundy, and Dahmer would carve out the desired body part of their victim in a crude fashion. Most would assume that this kind of mutilation was done hastily because they were afraid of getting caught. Others would argue the mutilation was done so because of their disregard for human life. Regardless of the reason, not all killers are as brutal when it comes to collecting trophies. In fact, one killer that was extremely precise when it came to collecting body parts as trophies was a man known as Charles Albright. Albright would shoot his victims in the back of the head, and then proceed to remove the eyes of his victims with a precision similar to that of a surgeon, and then take the eyes as trophies. In his actions of removing the eyes of his victims, this would earn him the name, the Eyeball Killer. Just to put it out there, in a similar situation to Ed Gein, considering Albright a serial killer is debatable. Albright was only ever officially incarcerated for one murder, but he has also been linked to at least 2 more. Anyway, his crimes and murderous instinct would first present themselves in his early years. Charles Albright was born in August 1933, where upon birth, he would quickly be placed in an orphanage. It wouldn't be long after that he would find himself being adopted by 2 strict parents, Fred and Dell Albright. The moment Albright could speak was when his adoptive mother decided to start educating him. She was a teacher, so she decided to homeschool Albright all on her own, mainly to keep an eye on him. Reportedly, because he was under such a strict household, there were no vacation days, so Albright managed to graduate high school by the time he was only 15. It was at this age that he would also constantly find himself getting in arguments with his adoptive father. They would fight over petty things, and the arguments would often result in Albright getting punished. It is this kind of living arrangement that made Albright an introvert, and unlike other charismatic killers, Albright grew to become socially awkward. Albright's early crimes involved thieving, killing animals, and assaulting others. Albright's first time in jail would be at the age of 16, where he was arrested after several guns and stolen money were found in his possession. After he served his time, he attended Arkansas State Teachers College, where he would promptly be expelled after he was caught stealing. But his crimes did not end there. He would later fake having a bachelor's degree, as well as a master's degree. He would forge the signatures on some checks, and would continue his thieving ways by stealing some merchandise from several stores. After his several arrests, Albright would use his self-manufactured degrees to get a job as a high school teacher, a football coach, and even a baseball bat manufacturer. Tragically, by 1981, Albright's crimes would take an even darker turn. In 1981, Albright was arrested after he was caught molesting a 9-year-old girl. Strangely enough, despite pleading guilty, he was only sentenced to a 4-month probation. A couple years later, he would find himself taking a particular interest in prostitutes, and he would soon start seeing many prostitutes on a regular basis. It's at this time that his crimes would truly begin to escalate. Charles Albright's first kill would be a local prostitute, Mary Lou Pratt. On December 13, 1990, Miss Pratt's body would be found dumped on the outskirts of Dallas County. On discovery, many on the scene quickly took notice of the bullet hole in her head. What they didn't notice, at first, was that her eyes had been surgically removed. It's even rumored that the forensic investigator on site let out a loud, "Dear God," upon discovery of the missing eyes. The police were left stunned and proceeded to conduct an investigation. However, with no leads, the case quickly went cold, at least for the time being. 2 months later, another body with a similar MO would be found. On February 10th, 1991, Susan Beth Peterson would be found dead, again in a similar fashion to Pratt. She was dumped in the same street that Pratt was, with a single gunshot to the head. On closer inspection, it would be revealed that she too was missing her eyes, both of which were removed with the precision of a surgeon, noted one officer. It was this murder that led the police to reopen the Pratt's investigation. That being said, they would have plenty on their hands because the murders did not stop there. Only a month later, another body would be discovered. This time, the body belonged to a prostitute, Shirley Elizabeth Williams. Like before, she took a single gunshot to the head, and her eyes had been removed from their sockets. Her body was discovered in the same area as before, on March 19th, 1991. Ballistics results would later find that the gun used on Miss Williams was also used on Pratt. The police concluded that they had a serial killer on their hands, and decided to use most of their manpower to find the culprit. After some investigation, and multiple prostitutes giving up Albright's name, detectives received a search warrant to investigate Albright's residence. The search turned up a lot of interesting items, most notable being X-Acto knives, perfect in size to surgically remove an eye if needed, books about serial killers, and clothing soaked in bleach. Curiously, the eyeballs of the victims were never found. Despite that, detectives concluded they had more than enough evidence to arrest Albright, to which they did and put him on trial. Albright, now age 58 at the time, was put on trial for the 3 murders, as well as the murder of another prostitute, who actually didn't have her eyes removed. The case against Albright actually wasn't as damning as you would assume. The case relied mostly on circumstantial evidence, such as the color of condoms in his possession, a random hair sample that was found, that wasn't a complete match, mind you, and a faulty testimony. Despite the testimonies of many of his friends, neighbors, and girlfriend at the time, all of which claimed that he was innocent, Albright was sentenced to life in prison. He is currently 83, serving his life sentence at John Montford Psychiatric Unit in Lubbock, Texas. Albright is probably by far the strangest serial killer case I've actually researched. Yes, there are killers who haven't been caught, like the Zodiac, but something about this one just doesn't sit right with me. For one, Albright was only arrested for one murder, that of Shirley Williams. Secondly, the FBI, while investigating the case, as well as many of the detectives on the case, stated that it had to take pristine surgical skill to remove the eyes from their sockets the way they were. So when did Albright learn these skills? As a shock to many, it is still unknown whether or not he actually has these skills. Lastly, where are the eyes? They have yet to be found to this day. It's these kinds of inconsistencies that lead many theorists to conclude that Albright may not be the real eyeball killer, specifically because there is no concrete evidence to suggest as much. I'm on the fence on this one, so I'd like to hear what you think. Do me a favor and comment below if you think Charles Albright is actually the eyeball killer, given the evidence. And if you'd like, give your reasoning too. So as far as impact goes, the eyeball killer has garnered a few documentaries, a couple books, and his story is said to have been one of the inspirations to the horror movie The Collector. Now that that is out of the way, let me leave you with this little factoid. Did you know? Making eye contact with someone for more than 6 seconds can indicate the desire to have sex, or murderous intent. So think about that the next time someone retains eye contact with you for more than 6 seconds.